Hi, Mr. Evans here, looking at the final strategy in Bartlett and Ghoshall's model, the Transnational Strategy. So Bartlett and Ghoshal have this theory that businesses, multinational companies operating globally, or at least in more than one international market, can follow any one of four strategies, and the strategy that they choose to follow will depend upon whether the product needs to be adapted to local needs, or can it be standardized across the world and just one product sold, and the pressure to reduce costs through achieving economies of scale, essentially. And this is what the model looks like. I've gone through each of the other strategies and explained a bit more about Bartlett and Goshal's model in previous videos. But we're on now the transnational strategy, which is basically the best of both worlds. Can we achieve global integration, economies of scale, at the same time as being totally adapting the product for local needs and customers in that market? So what factors would drive a transnational strategy? Well, the need to adapt products to meet local needs while still benefiting from economies of scale. It would be characterized by decentralized decision making, such as research and design and marketing, which would then be shared globally. So research and development undertaken in one country or in one subsidiary may then be shared globally, which is known as global learning. So local areas get to make their own decisions because of the need for local responsiveness, but we do need some centralised decision making for the coordination of these separate units. Obviously this can be quite a confusing strategy because we're trying to benefit from economies of scale, which indicates that we need a standardised product. But we also need to respond to local needs. So perhaps it would help if we looked at some examples of companies that may follow the transnational strategy. So one company that might follow the transnational strategy is Google. In terms of centralized decision making, the Google business model is based on the search engine, which is based on an algorithm that was come up with and refined by the founders of Google, Larry Page and Sergey Brin. And this forms the basis of the Google product across the globe. So that kind of is a one size fits all, benefiting from economies of scale business model. However, there is a lot of decentralized decision making that goes on at Google. These people know the local markets. They know the adaptations that Google need to make to be successful here. And you can see google.ae, google.de, google.co.uk, .com. Okay, all of these different domains that reflect that Google is operating in those international markets. And I live, my home is the UK, I would say, but I live at the moment in the UAE. If I put in the same word in google.co.uk and google.ae, I'm going to get different search results. And I suspect that Google themselves have got different business models that adapt to the customers there, because they need to sell the advertising space, and they'll need to know how that works in each market. So centralized part of the business, but decentralize other decisions. And the other thing about Google is they're highly innovative. You look at the Google Maps kind of and the Street View and all of that. I mean, that was probably come up with in one subsidiary, but then shared with the full company. Okay, so Google, I think, quite a good example of this transnational strategy. Equally, Ford produce cars. There's a fairly standardized engine that can be used, but models need to be adapted for each of the areas that Ford operates in. Ford operates in Asia, Africa, the States, Europe. Each of these areas has different preferences for their cars. So in Europe, people tend to drive slightly smaller cars than they do in the Middle East and the States. So Ford need to adapt to that and take their centralized learning, what they know about making good engines, and then applying that to the different markets that they operate in. Finally, Hsbc, another example of a company that may follow a transnational strategy. They're a bank, and they need a banking system through a computer, and that computer is held in London. I can't remember the name of that computer, but HSBC's main operational base is in London, and that's where the main kind of financial operations take place, where you put your money in HSBC wherever it is over the world, and it's recorded on this computer in London, and that kind of takes care of that. But lots of the decisions about who to lend money to, how to operate in different geographical areas, is decentralized to those areas. So we try and get the best of both worlds. We try and get a centralized core of the business, which can then be specialized across the globe, and if there's anything that these subsidiaries learn, that can then be shared with other places and adapted if it suits those needs. So the transnational strategy really tries to make the most of global economies of scale and adapt into local needs.